I want to talk about behavioral science and the sort of pivotal role it has in D2C brands. I know that in your group of companies, you have a CBL, which is the Consumer Behavior Lab, and I think you've got a behavioral science enthusiast as a co-founder. Is that right?
Mhm.
Tell me more about behavioral science, and what is it? What should D2C brands be considering, and how can it help?
Yeah, yeah. Behavioral science, we love to talk about behavioral science. It's the way we view it is essentially another input to guiding decision making and strategy for companies that a lot of people in the marketing world aren't necessarily consciously aware of. I think there's a lot of subconscious things. We all know that urgency is an important thing for consumers. If you give people a time limit on your promotion, you're going to get a lot of people who purchase towards the end of it. Um, but and that's something that marketers are aware of. Oh, we should do a timer, but they're not necessarily aware of why it's happening. And by understanding why, there's a lot of other applications that you can do, and try and test out for your brand. I think behavioral science is essentially this pool of knowledge that you can then use to then run tests and run strategies and see how it applies in the real world. For example, with one of our brands that we work with, there's a concept in behavioral science called artificial limits, which basically states that if you tell someone that there's a maximum amount that they can buy, for instance, you're buying a product. Well, I'll get to the use case, but for the test that we ran, but basically, it says if there's a limit, then you're going to end up buying more. And so we ran this test, and we said, okay, this is great. Let's apply it. And we during a promotion, we said the maximum amount of this product that you can buy is four. Even though most people never would buy four of this product. And what we saw was that our average order value and the amount of products per cart went up like 20% compared to having none of that language. So now we know that that's something to apply to all the future promotions that we do. And so that's just one example of so many. But there's behavioral science is this amazing thing. We train everyone at Function Growth goes through a training program to learn behavioral science and all these different concepts that exist, and it just gives us so many ideas and things to play around with. And you're not starting from scratch. It's not like an idea that just comes from I think this would be interesting to test. It's based in actual real world studies. Of course, the real world studies and human behavior is such a hard thing to nail down. There's so many different variables all the time. So we always say you can take a behavioral science concept, but you should run your own test to make sure that it applies to your product and your brand and your industry and your consumers. But it's just a fantastic resource that not too many companies think about.
So is it the idea that you take the concept and then see if it works, or is it based on a data set or customer feedback? Where does it come from? And if it is a concept, I love the sort of the maximum that you can buy. And I was wondering if you had any others that you can throw in, because I really like that. But I was wondering if there was any others that you could throw in. So is it the concept, or is it the or would business organizations already have some data that would inform behavior science?
Probably both, right? You could approach it from both angles. There's a plethora of behavioral science studies out there that exist. I'll give a shout out to Richard Schotten, who's a part of our consumer behavior lab, but he's written two or three books on behavioral science, and each one has 25 to 30 different concepts and basically behavioral science principles in there that can be applied. But you can also take a look at your brand and behavioral science. If you know all these different concepts and you're running something that's successful, it gives you another way to step out of it for a second and think, okay, well, why did this test work? Why did this AB? Why is this homepage variation working better than the other one that we tested? And it could be because of one of these principles. And then that gives you a way to understand it, and then something else to iterate on top of it. But yeah, there's tons. There's choice paralysis, which is the idea that consumers can be overloaded with options, and so less options that you give them, the more likely they are to change their behavior. Or social proof is one that everyone's familiar with. That's why UGC ads work so well for us for Wella, because you see other real people in sort of real in videos that are shot to look real, and those typically resonate the best with people. Or working with why influencers work. An
I'm,
interesting one, really fun one, is the pratfall effect, which is essentially people's sense that if you show off your weakness as a brand, people actually view that as being more authentic. So authenticity is basically, is perceived through imperfection in a way.
can you give me a real life example of that, where a brand goes out and gives a bit of
Yeah,
real?
we did something really fun last year. We did a holiday card to our network, and we basically had one cookie on it that was we took a screenshot of a cookie, basically placed it there, and then we took a same screenshot of the same cookie, but we made it look perfect. We had like perfect circle around it, and so it looked like just the most ideal cookie. And we sent it out to all of our network the question was, if you were to pick which cookie to eat, which one would you pick? And people pick the one that is imperfect, but what's really fascinating is people think that they would pick the perfect one. You're like, oh yeah, I would pick the perfect one. But it's just like that. And the best way to use the pratfall effect is to highlight something that people might perceive as a weakness, but that actually highlights your strengths. So like the classic example is Guinness. Guinness for a long time got a bad reputation because it took so long to pour at the when you went to a pub. It took super long time for the Guinness to be poured because they had to get the foam and whatever. I forget exactly the reason, but it was a common complaint. And Guinness created an entire ad campaign around good things are worth the wait, basically. And so they highlighted this perceived weakness and they made it a strength. So there's just all sorts of really cool applications like that. Pratfall effect is a fun one.
I love the pratfall effect. I love the you can only buy a maximum number, and I love the idea of less choice because otherwise you're overfaced. Some fantastic gold dust there.